Hello, fourth grade. I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you today during class, but I know how excited you are to start your clay project. So I thought that I would leave this little video for you so you would know exactly what was going to be happening when I come back next week and you will be prepared. So for this project, we are going to be making a cylinder out of clay. You can call it a mug, you can call it a cup. The one that we're going to be making won't have a handle. It is just going to be a cylinder, a clay cylinder with a bottom. All right, we are also going to be using texture on our surfaces of our cylinders. Okay, here's another one, another example. So we are going to be using clay stamps to make these textures, and those were just bisque fired clay. This is an example, a smaller example of those textures of, this is a mini mug that I made with a different class. But this is kind of the look that we're going for, right? This texture. So we're going to be starting out with a flat piece of clay, a flat slab. Okay, so this rolled out piece of clay is a slab. Yours will be larger. I'm just using this one as an example. So let's see. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so when you get your slab of clay, you are going to have an opportunity to use clay stamps. And my older kids, and some of these are mine, we have spent time over the years making these clay stamps. They are modeled out of clay, and then they get fired in the kiln, and they are great for putting impressions in clay. And they're all different kinds, and I have a little variety here to show you. Okay, so some of our clay stamps, you can see the texture. That's actually for rolling, and I'll show you that in a moment, right? So some of them have textures on both ends, and some of them are shaped, just kind of like a little stamp, and they might have little stamps on each side. Some of them are round like a disc, and these are, some of them are for pressing, and some of them are for rolling, and I'll show you that in a second. So you'll be starting out with a slab of clay. And again, this is just an example. I'll show you my larger example in a moment. But when you are stamping, okay, you're not going to Hulk stamp, okay? You're going to take your stamp, you're going to press it into the clay, and you're going to give it a little wiggle as you push. Okay, and then it's going to look something like that, okay? We are not going to smash, right? If you smash it, I don't know if you can see how the side of the clay is kind of buckled and look, it made a little bump on the back side. We don't need to do that, right? What we want to do is just take our little stamp, right? And we're just going to give it a little wiggle. We're going to push it down, give it a little wiggle, right? We don't want to distort the shape of our, of our slab, but we do, we want to make sure that the pattern shows up. Now, I just wanted to show you this. These disc-shaped stamps, okay, they have patterns on the sides as well. Those are made for rolling. So if I take this stamp and if I carefully, if I kind of push down and I roll it, then it creates, that one's a little more subtle, but it creates a little texture right there, continuous texture. Okay, so this has a little kind of like a little flower carved out of it. Again, right, you want to push it down, just not crazy hard. Ooh, and then gently pull it out. Okay, and then you get the stamps. So that's kind of the basis of what our design's going to be. And then I also have, of course, our shish kebab stick. This has a lot of different shapes that it can make. So if you use the end, you can make little dots, little circles. This end, the pointy end, makes even smaller circles. And you can also even, you can create lines, right, by just kind of gently pushing the shish kebab stick into the clay. I can flip it over and use the pointy side. That's the best part. My favorite thing about clay is that almost anything on the planet can be a tool, right, for making texture in clay. So these are some of the line textures that I can get by pushing my shish kebab stick into the clay. So once you have this done, right, you've got your slab, you've used your stamps and whatever else you decided you were going to do with your clay. So I have an example right here that I made earlier, super fancy, right? I used a whole bunch of different stamps. I really kind of took my time, although I know we don't have as much time as I wish we did in the class. But I used the stamps, and then I also, there's some lines in there where I use the shish kebab stick, and then I have some big dots and little dots, and I just kind of filled the whole thing up with texture. Okay, so now the next step is taking our two-dimensional clay slab and creating our three-dimensional cylinder. Okay, so basically, I guess you're going to figure out which side is going to be the top of your cylinder, of your cup, and I'm not sure which one I want to be my top. I guess it doesn't matter at this point. I'm going to very gently take this, and I am going to start carefully, especially if you have accidentally stamped in a little too aggressively, right, a little too much, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to very gently start bending your slab, into a cylinder shape. You want the two ends to connect to each other. Now, it may not be a perfect circle now, but once you attach that and make it a little more secure, then you will be able to kind of gently adjust. Okay, this is really important. Clay does not like to be rushed. Okay, so if you want to curve it, you can't just pick it up and right. It doesn't like that. So you really do need to kind of make small adjustments. Take your time, right? And then you can kind of get this to where it needs to be. Now, once you have it in this curved cylinder shape, right, we need to attach these two pieces, and we need to make them, we need to attach them in a strong way. And so I'm going to put this aside for a second, and I'm going to do a little demo on how we attach those kinds of pieces. Actually, how we attach any clay to other clay, always, right? I bet some of you already know what I'm about to say. Yes, scoring and slipping. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to use my shish kebab stick, and I'm going to, here, I'll just make them and show you. I'm going to make these little score marks. That's why they call it scoring, right? See, I've just kind of roughed up that surface. Some people like to think of it as Velcro, right? You're creating the Velcro on either side of the clay. And then I have over here, I have some water, a little bit of water in my bucket, and a crummy brush. And it literally says crummy brushes, right? Because I don't want you using my nice brushes, your nice brushes, for clay, okay? Because it kind of tears them up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of water on this brush, and I'm going to brush some water on here. I'm not going to brush it on so much that it flattens it all out, but I kind of do want it to start to melt the clay a little bit. What that does is it creates like it's almost like clay glue. It's called slip, S-L-I-P, like you slipped on the ice, right? But what it does is it creates a bond. I'm going to flip this over so you can see. So what's going to happen is, with your cylinder, you're going to score the two ends. You're going to attach them together, and you're going to have to push them together a little bit with your hands, with your fingers, right? You want to kind of very gently push it together. If you have some kind of watery clay ooze coming out, that's perfect. That's exactly what you want, all right? Now, I'm kind of smoothing it down with my finger, and this clay is pretty fresh. So it looks like it's, attaching pretty well. And a lot of students will say, but it's already stuck. I don't need to score and slip. But you do, because as the clay dries, it shrinks and pulls itself away. And oftentimes those connections that you make will come apart. So now this part is, this is kind of extra, right? Necessary, but extra. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little lump of clay, And I am going to make, it needs to be fresh clay. It cannot be something that's been kind of sitting around in a bag or sitting out on your table. It really does need to be kind of fresh. I'm going to make a tiny little coil. So cute. And I am going to kind of measure that coil up against the inside of the seam, inside the mug. So the coil would go inside, right here. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of gently press it down. Now, when I press stuff, I'm always supporting it on the back. I'm not going to take my finger and just push because it'll just open up on the back side. Okay, now we have, you know, in the art room, we have a variety of tools. Okay, and so a lot of tools will work for this. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'm actually going to take this tool. I'm going to use this tool. It's kind of rounded on the end, kind of flattish. And I'm doing this like this so you can see. Otherwise, if I were trying to do it inside the cylinder, your visual wouldn't be great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this. Okay, if you were to basically divide this, okay, I kind of just very lightly drew a line. What you're going to do, and again, I'm supporting this behind. Sometimes when I do this, what I'll do is I'll just kind of place this in my hand so that I can push down, but I have my hand underneath it, so it supports it. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to use my, oops, I can get close enough. I'm going to use my tool here, and I am going to smooth 1/2 of this coil onto one side, the inside of one side of this cylinder. And then I'm going to take my my tool and I'm going to smooth the other half of the coil onto the other side. And it may look a little messy at first, right? But I can take this tool and I can just kind of smooth it a little bit, right? And there. And the goal is to hide the seam, right? Wherever two pieces of clay connect, it creates a seam. And what we want to do is hide that seam. So you can even, you know, turn the other side over. Now this is the side that has the texture on it, so we don't want to smooth it too much on the outside because we don't want to mess with the texture, but that's kind of how that works. And so now it kind of looks like, you can kind of see where the seam was, but it's pretty well hidden. And that makes it very strong, okay? Now, that is all we have time for this particular class. If you can get this part finished and get it connected with a coil in your seam, you're doing awesome. And if you can't, that's okay. We will figure out a way to get you in either during the week, or we're going to wrap our stuff up really tight and make sure that it is still okay to do those things when you guys come back next week. So I'm glad that you were here for this, and I'm really excited to start clay with you. All right, bye guys.